Honest conversations are missing. If you get attacked for having an honest answer, you're going to stop having honest conversations. And if
True.
you can't have an honest conversation, the forecast is always going to be messed up. You're never going to hit your number. People are going to be scared to work with you. And then you're going to see attrition in people, which is the worst thing for the
This is the Revenue Vault, where leaders come to build unstoppable revenue engines. I'm Marcus Shan, CEO of Bentley Consulting. Today's guest is Sunny Bliss, VP of Sales at Docusign, a leader who spends her commute listening to Gong calls and just moved her team from transactional to strategic selling while keeping them in the top 10%. Sunny shares some pretty interesting things, such as her new pipeline metric that prioritizes pipeline quality over quantity. She's built a 4-bucket customer experience framework and believes soft skills are actually the hardest skills to master in today's complex selling environment. We unpack her call inspection methodology that develops genuine curiosity, the specific discovery gaps killing most deals, and Docusign's revolutionary parental leave policies that drive insane employee retention. If your reps are leaving money on the table in discovery, or you're struggling with pipeline quality, this conversation will rewire how you think about revenue leadership. All right, Sunny. So when you look at your org, what's maybe one thing your revenue org is doing right now that you believe puts it in the top 10%?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. I think our focus on customer experience is different than what other people are focusing on, although we should all be focusing on customer experience, but making the customer the guiding light of everything we do, every conversation we have, every proposal we pitch tends to move the needle for us, that's for sure.
You know, I love that, right? Because I feel like a lot of times for sales team, sales org, they're so focused on like hitting their number, what's in it for themselves.
Yeah.
What are maybe some ways you've helped kind of guide and craft that journey so a new hire or someone seasoned has that customer experience in mind?
Sure. Well, I crafted a slide called creating customer experiences. Let's
Help.
start with that. So we have basically 4 buckets that we think about.
Mm.
And so the research of the company, of course, using AI for that, we can dive into that, but knowing the customer better than they know themselves.
Mm.
And then informing and multi-threading based on that information. And then how can we make our company work for the customer? So field marketing, customer advisory boards, video testimonials, those kinds of things. And then finally, using your pod to figure out what's the best thing for the customer and how can we market to them the correct way, use our executives in the right way, really highlighting the customer. So how does the customer need to hear what we have to say is the phrase that I start every team meeting with.
You know, I love that, right? It's almost like a little simple, like 4-box document, if you will, right? Is that like a tool your team is filling out before they hop on calls, or is that just more of like kind of teaching, like how you have kind of taught to the org?
That's how we teach to the org. But in terms of planning, when we do our one-on-ones and we talk about deals, like specifically, what are we trying to sell them based on? What do they need? What do we think they need? And that requires a lot of discovery, never stopping that discovery, and really being genuinely curious, which I think is a skill that, it should be internal. We should all be genuinely curious about what's happening with the people we're talking to, but we stop when we hear what we need to hear to just get that sale. So continuing the curiosity and opening Pandora's box, as I call it.
You know, it's so true, right? I feel like, when you look at something like even Gong stats, they have said, the top sellers typically, I think it's like 60% them like listening and 40% them talking, right? And reality is I think a lot of orgs struggle with that, where it's like the opposite, but pretty drastically. The rep is like selling and pushing more than they're actually being curious.
Right.
So what are some things you found has really helped you guide your team towards that path?
Listening to Gong calls and chorus calls, Gong and chorus, Gong and chorus, Gong and chorus. I do a lot of inspection, listening to calls and going back. So I use my commute actually to and from the office, listening to calls and notating and really pointing out where we could be doing a better job and applauding when there is an even keel in the talking versus listening. I don't think we can ever be too inspective, if that's a word. It should be a word. Inspecting of our conversations. I think the most important skills truly are our soft, the ones that we deem are soft skills,
Yeah.
I actually think they're the hardest skills, but if we don't master those, we're never going to close a deal. And there are some people who have been super, super lucky because they've had the velocity
Yeah.
or they've been in the right place at the right time, or the high tide floats all boats.
Yeah.
But when you get into the times like we have now, where everybody, it feels like there's always everyone's scrutinizing budgets, but I've never seen it like it is today.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that have to get involved on deals to get them to close. But if we don't have those soft skills conquered, we're never going to get a deal closed in this market.
I think it's really cool is you talk about one of those things where I hear a lot of sales leaders who are managing teams, they avoid doing, and you're right, because in today's time, there are more stakeholders involved than ever before. Deals are going higher up, even if they're small deals. They're going higher up for more approvals than ever before.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reps who are, I don't want to say order takers, but the ones who are order takers are kind of falling flat in their faces.
Yeah.
While those
Right.
who they know you have to do deep discovery, multi-thread, and get executive sponsorship, all those key things, they've already been doing it for a long time, so they're okay. For sales leaders, how do you? I mean, you're listening to them on your commute, these calls, these course calls, these Gong calls. When did you realize that was a key part to developing your team? I think a lot of leaders don't do that, or they avoid doing it because they're too busy, supposedly.
So it's actually really funny. If you go back on my resume, about 10 years ago, I worked for a company called Decker Communications, and I was both a coach and in sales for them, but sales coaching and working on communication skills. So not just, there's no such thing as private speaking. We're always public speaking, even on one-on-one conversations.
I love
And
that.
so mastering those skills at that time. And one of the key things that we always talked about is there's no such thing as these are hard skills. These are the most critical skills.
Yeah.
And so from that point, and if you look at my journey, it's really funny. I followed conversational intelligence tools at every place I worked. It was a critical thing because I'm super passionate about it. I'm super passionate about that being a tool to help us all get better. So I've been pretty excited about conversational intelligence for the last 10 years.
That's amazing. So and I feel like some leaders are maybe they don't know what to look for, so they always give really canvas, but hey, you know what? Good job. Just try to get deeper to pay. It's very basic, very surface level. So for you, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things you look for? Where do you start to dive into a call recording?
Sure. So feedback is a gift. So let's start with that. Most people say this was a great call, but that's not really helpful.
Correct.
Because nobody knows what they were doing to make them great. And chances are they weren't always great. So
Correct.
leading with feedback. So there's definitely that. But what are we looking for? We're looking for an upfront contract. We're looking for discovery that doesn't end throughout the call, right? So a really clear agenda, making sure it's conversational. That's super, super key. If you sound like you've got a clipboard and you're going through questions, you're not developing rapport. You're not developing trust. Anyone can ask a clipboard of questions, but looking for that genuine curiosity. Again, it's a skill that we can learn, although I am genuinely a curious person, so it's not that difficult. But I'm learning that it's a really hard skill to teach. How can you be genuinely curious and conversational? So are you, when somebody says, and this was a call that I was on yesterday or listening to yesterday, one of the stakeholders said, Bob, remember this, what we were talking about last week? Yeah. And then the AE just continued on the conversation. I was like, what were they talking about last week? How does this relate to that? What's happening here? So keying into every single statement, really listening, not thinking about your next question during the call, right? Listening to what they have to say and then digging in. So that's what I look for often.
I love that, right? I use a very simple phrase, very similar to that, right? And I call it's we want to look for a rim. What's the relevance? What's the impact? What's the motive? So when that prospect says something like, hey, this is causing XYZ issue, cool. Hey, what's the relevance behind that? You're thinking, what's the relevance? What's the impact? What's the motive, right?
Right.
And if the reps are
Absolutely.
thinking that way, they're like, yeah, hey, Bob, that's a good point. Can you tell me a little more about that? Can you help me understand why this is so important for you?
Yes,
So it's amazing.
exactly.
But you're spot on though, because most of the reps are almost transactional with the discoveries versus transformational. And you need to be able to be listening to those calls to make that happen, right? Now, when you go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, the last couple of companies I've been at have been based primarily, it was more of a transactional sell. And now they're moving to a platform sale or to a more strategic sell.
Yeah.
And so the people that were hired for the transactional sell haven't had the skills, haven't had the training to dive deeper. It's what can I do to get you in that car today, sort of transactional mindset. We have to shift the mindset to be curious. And if that means sacrificing short-term revenue for the long-term gain and 5x the revenue, that's where we have to be thinking. Now, there has to be a balance, right? Because we still have to make our numbers, and there will always be transactional moments, but which ones of those can we take into a more strategic or transformative sales process is where we see the difference. Right?
100%, especially a company like Docusign, right? You have a full suite of products, right? But maybe they'd reach it for one single thing, but
Right.
you can offer so much more. But also, it's like usually, it's only one department, right? Versus like, oh, they have a whole bunch of different divisions.
Oh,
So the rep gets excited, like, hey, maybe we close this Fortune 500 deal, but
yeah.
it's a very small piece of the pie. Like,
Absolutely. Or they just called about envelopes. Let's just sell them those envelopes. Let's step back. Starting with a very simple question at the beginning of these, sort of account reviews or account introductions, as accounts change reps over time. Let's just step back. What is the bank? I'm in the fins industry or the fins group. What is the bank working on long term? What does 2026 look like?
right.
We're hearing that people are doing tech consolidation. They're focusing on the customer experience. How does that relate to what you're doing? These are questions that aren't typical in transactional deals.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
want to know about the whole picture because what if they go off on a tangent that we can't solve for, right?
Oh,
But that's how we become that trusted advisor or
right.
being curious or showing up without selfish intent. I want to hear about everything. I want to know what you're working on.
You're so spot on. They end up stepping over $100 bills to pick up like dollar bills
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's like a
Without
fast
question.
win, right?
Yes.
Now for you, because I love that you're so hands on. You're in the calls. You're listening intently. You're giving legitimate, real feedback. Aside from that, what are maybe some other things that you do, or maybe what's your approach to sales leadership that you think is maybe different from others you've seen or observed, whether it's your peers or past peers you've worked with?
Sure. I think there's two parts to this question. And the first one is like, where do we go from here? Or shouldn't everybody be doing that? But
You would
I have a
assume
human
so.
first approach. We are humans first. And
Mhm.
that I think is something that gets lost
Yeah.
in sales leaders because we are so metrics driven. We've got to hit the number that we're forgetting to be human. What I'm learning and what I've seen and what I've experienced in my journey in sales is there are leaders who manage with a stick and the metrics are the only piece. But when metrics start to drop, like what's happening, what's on the human side that's like contributing to that? And where, like, let's get to the root of the
Mhm.
situation
Yeah.
so we can get to positive metrics. So human
Mm.
first is really, really important.
I
Um,
love that.
but then like looking at, again, like if I go back to the customer experience, I want to look at like actually what are the churn numbers? So I've always been an install base. So we have the gift of talking to customers, people who have already bought into the product. If they're thinking about churning, it happens, right? So what happened? Where did we lose them? Is it because they've had 6 reps? Is it because they had a problem that never got resolved? How can I affect that? We can't affect everything, but if we're looking at that and we're sort of looking at those trends, usage trends, those leading indicators, things will change. I don't think people look so much at why did people leave, just like, what are we doing from here? Let's go, let's go, let's go. If we can fix some of these problems, our customers are going to bring us a majority of the business and they're going to want to grow with us. Nobody wants to get rid of a vendor unless you've been totally hands off and if you haven't paid attention to them. So again, like going back to that customer experience,
Yeah.
how involved are we in their business and really understanding what their challenges are and their issues are and how can we relate to them also as humans first and then figure out what solutions we can help them solve for. That's I
Mm.
think the difference, and that's where I'm focused.
I love so much about that because I ran full P&Ls for a long time, right? So even in my sales roles, sales leadership roles, I still ran a full P&L for pretty much the majority of my career as a sales leader. Meaning half my comp was tied to how we did at the bottom line, which meant churn was always really important to me. Retention, like people keeping to their contracts, et cetera. That was always vitally important on the back end. So for you, I love that focus you already have as well. How do you get your team to think that way? Because that's always been a challenge, right? Because they're so focused on their number this month, this quarter, this year. They're not always thinking like the longevity of the customer and the back end consumption and all that stuff. How do you get them to think like a business person, if you will?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. It's interesting. I mean, telling stories of success and demonstrating that. So I think there's a lot that can be learned through past experiences where we went wrong and where we went right.
Mm.
Of course, there's data and statistics that can back those numbers up all day long. We didn't get to the $5 million deal through just one $5 million deal. It was a series of things. And when you go back and you look at the top right and you say, this is what they're doing, and they can highlight their stories and how they got there. It's very seldom is there one magic silver bullet that gets people to do that. It's a series of events and a series of actions over time. And so we can measure things like activity, email activity, call activity, and going back and listening to Gong calls. But those kinds of things are, again, leading indicators. So when was the last time this customer was touched? They literally haven't heard from you since January. Hello. And we tier our customers too, right? So we've got tier A, tier B, tier C, and we're going to spend our time obviously in tier 1 and propensity to buy and looking at those metrics. I understand that. And is there an opportunity in tier 3? What are we going to do with those people? We don't just blow them off. we need to do discovery in some sort. So utilizing the resources that we have to grow those conversations. It's like getting people to think about the whole picture. And there's only 24 hours in a day, and we're talking about things that take a lot of time. But if you can start, if we start managing our time based on activities to drive revenue today, tomorrow, and 6 months from now, we will have a balanced book of pipeline and business, and we'll see the fruits of our labor as such.
I love it, right? It's when I've always defined as having really clear IPAs for the reps, income producing activities, things that they do consistently, right? When you define it clearly for them exactly what they are and what to do, it just increases like they're actually going to do it. So this way you get the result you want to get. Now, just so we have some context, right, for the listeners out there, what's like the current go-to-market motion from lead to close? What's that look like?
Yeah. So we get leads in lots of different ways. I think it's really important that as a company, we think as of the company, it's the company's responsibility, mine and yours and marketing and the SDR and the CEO, all of our opportunities and our responsibility to create leads, right? But, setting up, so there's a couple of things. There's just the time management aspect of it, right? So we've got leads to deploy. So how are we getting those? And what is you're working with, blocking out time on your calendar to call, email, prospect, research, whatever. And then, you set up a discovery call. And that discovery call should net in next steps in a tiered approach, right? So tangible next steps. I have a need that you have to solve today. I have a need sometime in the future, but I heard something that triggered an article, a connection to another person, maybe another person internally at my company or another person internally at their company. So from there, we start to multi-thread and have an additional set of meetings. That can take a while. It can take 2 calls. And I think that is another area that needs to be coached when you're moving from transaction to more strategic. Discovery isn't one call. It's a multitude of calls. Leaving every call with a next step, I think that's probably an obvious one. But then the time from initial discovery call, so if you think of the sales stage processes, where do we get stuck most of the time? But it's after discovery and then they never take a call again. What happened? Where did they go?
You were so excited.
Hello out there. Hello. It's like a big canyon. It's like, I don't know what happened. They seem so interested.
Yeah.
But we didn't probably show up or follow up with the right point of view or have a genuine interest in their, whatever. Anyway, so once we understand that, we kind of got to start over, discovery, and then we're value selling all the time. If we're not doing that value sale, we're really missing out. Nobody is signing a deal today that doesn't have a business case.
That's right.
Adjusted or assigned to it, right? Because everybody has to justify every dollar, even if it's $15 for ballpoint pens. You got to why am I doing this? I have a funny story on that, but we have to, again, open Pandora's box. So that process of, we really need to go through an ROI, and our value team wants to connect with your team to really make sure we get those metrics, not only to help you in the business case justification, but also once we're implemented, we can track success and make sure that we're meeting those metrics. Ding, we're setting it up for the renewal, right? We're starting now to talk about what that renewal is going to look like. And those are the kinds of things that a lot of people go, wow, you're really invested in my success. And other salespeople go, God, that takes a lot of time. What if, I don't want to do it? We got to open Pandora's box. We got to find out. And in that process, are they invested? is there like an opportunity here? I'm selling you $100,000
Mm.
something. This is a $5,000 problem. That's a problem.
Right.
We can qualify you out or we can qualify you in and then keep going, right? Value selling is
Mm.
critical. And then you're just always doing the trial close. If somebody doesn't want to sit down and go through the numbers with you, are they really interested in buying?
Yeah.
We know they're going to have a business justification. And once we get through that, are they introducing us to other people? Are they bringing people into the conversation? Do they have it all handled?
Mm.
These are all trial close opportunities that we have to capitalize on. And then we have an accurate forecast, and then you're at President's Club.
It's that easy. It's that easy.
It's just
So
that simple.
that's that simple. So when you look at like the overall kind of flow, right? And I know you're newish into the role. You know, you've been onboarded. We were joking on before we got into today. Where do you see maybe some of the biggest drop offs currently in the process? Where you're like, okay, the team has to get better at this specific stage.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's definitely the discovery,
Mm.
discovery. I really think my team is super seasoned on how to put together a deal,
Yeah.
actually, or like thinking about all the different levers.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
good. But it's also very transactional. We got to get this done today. But so the
Mm.
discovery, they're leaving money on the table. We don't want to leave any money
Yeah.
on the table. And just that genuine curiosity, it's like, we have to get better. We have to get better. Tell me more is like the phrase of the century.
Mm.
But that's where we get stuck. And we see that when deals stall or when they just never call us back or we'll talk to you next year. We see that's why. That's definitely why.
You know, I always appreciate talking to someone like you who's in the weeds, who's run the whole business, and you see it from like a business perspective because it's amazing how so many think we just need more pipeline. You can always have more pipeline, but if you have like a leaky hole in your bucket where deals go into discovery kind of fall out, I mean, that's a
Right.
huge area. We could fix that area by itself. And you have greater throughput from that discovery to the next stage of like 80, 90%. I mean, it's just you put more cash on the bottom end. I mean, that's what you do,
Yeah,
right?
without question, without
Yeah.
question. We have a metric right now. I mean, everyone struggles with creating pipeline. And
Sure.
then you put in like a create pipeline metric, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's just go create crap for pipeline because that's
Right.
going to solve the problem. We
Right.
can't have that. So, what I love is that we have a 15 hosted Gong call metric per week. And
Mm.
so you've got 135, 150 accounts. You just need 15 hosted calls. And what that means, a hosted call is I have set this up and said, let's do this, not an SDR setting up a discovery call
Mm.
because of work they did. But that means I've said something to a customer that has said that they go, oh, this is valuable. There's a reason to meet, and I'm going to come with a point of view and we're going to dig in and
Mm.
get curious on your initiatives. That's the difference. And from those calls, if we're not creating pipeline, then we can go back and say, well, what happened? And listen to the call. And
Right.
then this is where the rubber meets the road. All things come together. Well, you didn't dig in. The discovery wasn't good. You weren't prepared.
Mm.
You weren't buttoned up. Have a visual slide. It drives me crazy actually when people don't show up with a visual slide. That's how I learn. I learn through visual things. And so show up with a PowerPoint, show that you put in the work and the research. And they're like, wow, this person's going to add value to me. So I like
Mm.
that we are tracking Gong calls. Now there's still a pipeline metric. Let's
Sure.
not get crazy.
Sure.
But
It leads to it. It's connected.
you're
The bridge.
exactly
Yeah.
absolutely connected. And that's where all the other things that we've been talking about are magical because that leads to pipeline. It leads to getting deals through closure. But it kind of starts with those soft skills. Do you know how to do real discovery?
You know, I love that so much. And it's interesting where, you know, across the board, we work with a lot of different orgs and a lot of different reps. That is like the number one skill across the board. Like if they can just nail amazing, true discovery and treat it as like an ongoing, you know, thing versus just like, you know, step in the process, it's like amazing what happens to the rest of the sales process. Like they get bigger deals, they close deals faster, they end up getting more stakeholders in. I mean, it's
And more
more,
retention
more,
and
more
less
everything.
churn and
I
all
mean,
the things. All the things.
it
Yeah.
is interesting how it's all tied together, right? So as you look at as you look at your org, right, you dive in and you're starting to see, okay, there's some gaps. Obviously, gonna work on discovery, et cetera. Is there maybe one challenge that you're thinking about with your sales org? You're like, okay, if we don't fix this in the next like 12 months, I'll be kicking myself. Is there anything that comes top of mind for you?
Well, it's value selling.
Mm.
Um, but it's everything I have to say revolves around sort of the self-awareness.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if we don't solve our ability to communicate
Yeah.
conversationally, we are going to lose the battle. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing the changes right now. So it's that and blocking time and time management with 150 parent accounts, not to
Yeah.
mention all the sub accounts. How are we going to use our time, and
Yeah.
where are the hiccups in why aren't we prospecting? Why aren't we doing the research ahead of time? What else can we be doing? So do we have the right tools in place? I think we
Mm,
do. Do we know how to use the tools? I don't know that anybody has figured out AI totally at this
right.
point. The prompts are so critical. But if we get the prompts right, we can do a lot of those things
Mhm.
more quickly, which gives us more time to have more valuable conversation. So it's time management, mastering the art of conversation,
Oh yeah.
super critical. And if we can do those two things, I think we're going to have a baller year.
You know, I think is really interesting is I believe the time management and self-awareness piece are like really closely connected. Cause like a lot of times as you've seen, like, you know, I was running orgs with 100 plus reps and they all think they're like super busy, like doing all the right things. But when you get in the weeds, you're like, you spend how many hours like Googling stuff? Like how many times you get distracted by your phone and you're pulling out scrolling TikTok or something? It's like, it's wild.
Who does that during a
Right.
workday? You're
Oh, yeah.
scrolling?
Yeah,
What?
it's wild, right? So, how do you go about helping them increase their self-awareness? Because if they're aware of the core problems, it's like admitting that they have a problem to begin with. So, how do you go about doing that to begin with?
Right. I think developing an environment of
Mm,
feedback. Like feedback is a gift, and I start end every
mm,
call with people on my team above me, my peers, and the people that report up to me with what can I be doing differently? How did this work for you? I'm working on giving you this kind of feedback or coming prepared with this information for calls. Is that working? Because I'm not sure that I got the response I was looking
mm.
for. And being really open to
Love
the
that.
feedback. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't realize that. I'm going to work on that, being honest about it. When I can create that environment, then they're open to hearing the feedback
Mm,
as well. And so when I give the feedback of, hey, listen, your pipeline creation or your Gong calls dropped from 10 calls this week to 2 calls this week, like what's happening there? Like, where are you spending your time? Well, I've been researching this. How can we cut down the amount of time you're researching and spend more time doing things that matter? Like, what does that look like? And having those really honest conversations, I feel it's just missing. Honest conversations are missing. If you get attacked for having an honest answer, you're going to stop having honest conversations. And if
true.
you can't have an honest conversation, the forecast is always going to be messed up. You're never going to hit your number. People are going to be scared to work with you. And then you're going to see attrition in
Mm,
people, which is the worst thing for the customer
right.
experience because now customers have to start from scratch again, right? It all comes back to the customer experience. If we can keep our people happy and keeping them progressing and growing and having those honest conversations about growth and what's needed and where we're getting stuck and problem solve together and then hold people accountable, it's just a better environment for everything. And
Mm.
then you ultimately get more dollars at the end of the day.
You know, I love that. And you know, one thing it was very subtle that you did, and I want to make sure listeners and viewers later who watch and listen to this catch on. Even when you're kind of walking it through, like making helping them become aware, you weren't like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You need to do it this way. You're saying, hey, how can we solve this problem?
We
How can we accomplish whatever objective together? So it's a collaborative, us
absolutely.
working together to create a solution together, right? And that's so critical where I feel a lot of leaders are more armchair quarterbacks.
Yes.
Go do this, go get more pipeline, go make more calls versus, hey, you know, I observe this to be a challenge. Let's talk about this. How can we work together to find a solution to get you to where you want to go?
I think a collaborative environment
Mm.
is critical. And my LinkedIn profile just talks about me. Like I go back and look at my LinkedIn profile every now and then. I'm like, is this still an accurate assessment of who I am? Yes, it is. Uh, a collaborative environment is
Mm.
my number one
Yeah.
thing that I strive for and that I want to be a part of. This working
Mm.
remotely thing was not working for me because I, I want to be in an office where I can collaborate even more
Yeah.
freely and more often. I think
Mm.
that in-person thing actually really helps that.
It's so true. I mean, well, there's a level of trust that gets built in
Sure.
person, right? Just
Mhm.
because of that. But also, like, you know, it's like when you're together, it's easy to pull someone aside. When you see their body language is down, like, because anyone could turn it off for
Absolutely.
a Zoom call,
No.
but it's the in betweens
Yes.
that tells you everything on how their body language, their tonality, everything. It's like there's something else going on beyond just, just whatever they're saying.
Yeah,
Because some,
no,
some are good at faking it.
absolutely. Big proponent of being back in the office. No, not every day. I really like our 3-day a week policy. It's working for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, today I get to
You're
work from
watching
home.
later, just
Perfect.
in case you saw that 3 days a
Yeah.
week. So, okay, so now, you're taking on a relatively new org, right? I'm sure there's some people who are way above the number, some are hitting and some are below. When you see if someone's behind their number, how do you determine if it is it like a people issue? Is it a process issue or like a structural issue?
Yeah, starting with human first, we look at the data and we
Mm,
look at where they've been and where they're going. And if people have been trending low in all of the areas in forecasting capability, closing deals, not the gong
mm,
calls, then it's a, it's a person issue. But generally, if somebody's here and then it's here, this
yeah.
is like something has changed in their environment
Mm,
and their expectations in their territory, and it's easier to have the conversation about what's changed, and then let's go, work on it and
mhm,
find out where you're using your time. I find that relationships, like cross team relationships,
mm,
are should be evaluated all the time and on every call. And so having a peer connection and the different orgs, whether it's marketing or whether it's the
mhm,
SDR org, the SC org, customer success org,
mhm,
whatever, and making sure that those dynamics are working, I think is really, really critical. And being able to get feedback from peers
mm,
on how this is working. I think adjusting those relationships or expectations tends to have a really big effect on the overall trajectory of someone's happiness and
oh, yeah.
therefore hitting their numbers and hitting expectations. Um, Processes. I have a couple of new people. We all started actually like the same week. So three of us. So I'm new leading the team and they're new to Docusign and new to the team as well. And we were all learning about processes and not understanding how the new tools work at a company takes a lot of time and can be a massive roadblock in time management and just like why aren't we able to get to that next level because quotes are taking forever. I don't understand like how to create an opportunity. So it's like a tool process
Mhm,
actually. And then just understanding the sales process again, reviewing gong calls, like where are they getting stuck? What does the pipeline say? You've got deals that are sitting in 210-day pipeline. They're never going to close. What are you doing this week? And let's move this out. And so the first 3 weeks of me being here is we went through every deal for 365 days in every single person's pipeline. And we just cleared it out. And so, yeah, I don't have 3X. I don't have 3X pipe at the moment, but what I have is real and we can have
mhm.
real conversations about it and we can go figure out how to make it better. Um, Anyway, so we got to start with like a clear view of
Oh, yeah.
what's happening and then be able to iterate on where's the problem? Is it the process? Is it the people? Is it the
Mm,
person? Is it the environment? There's lots of things that, there's never one thing. It's the collaboration of lots of pieces that make up someone's performance, I think.
mm. I think it's really, really valuable. And you hit on a couple key things. And I think one of the things I want to kind of double down on, which I thought was really, really powerful, was, you mentioned how critical it is for their experience when they're connected with other people within an organization, within other departments, whether it's, product, marketing, CS, their peers, etc. And I know you and DocuSign, so maybe it's not part of the onboarding. If it's not part of the onboarding, how have you seen it work really well to integrate it early in, or how do you create that environment for them so they feel more connected to other departments? Because I think it's a big miss in a lot
Right.
of companies.
Yeah, no, that's you're thinking about it the right way. So in our weekly team meetings, yeah, we have two meetings. One's every 2 weeks and the one's every week. The team meeting typically has a guest speaker and a
Mm,
guest speaker from another part of the organization.
awesome.
And that guest speaker is typically or can be somebody that we've heard from in like a larger town hall that we've
Yeah.
had, like they're doing something different and bringing them in to say, hey, listen, how can we utilize this person's talents? But more importantly, how can we make them successful? When we think outside of our own success, we will ultimately be successful. But how can I make the field marketing person successful? How can I make this event a success?
Mhm.
How can I make sure that the SDR hits and crushes their number? What can I do to help them? There's this like servant mindset. That's how we get connected,
Sure.
and connecting the dots is something that I think that's on my LinkedIn profile as well. But I'm like a natural dot connector, and I think it's been part of my success over the years. I'm always looking for ways to make other people successful, which then in turn just helps myself and my teams also be successful.
I love that so much. One of the things that this is years ago when I was revamping our onboarding program, and I think you'll appreciate this, is in the first 4 weeks, I was part of the responsibility was actually spending half a day with different department heads and some of their teams to understand their world and like learn,
Yeah,
hey, what do past salespeople do that basically messes your job up, makes it hard?
absolutely,
It's amazing what
absolutely.
they learn. Like, oh, when I don't like, for instance, one of the things I learned early on was like, oh, if I don't explain the agreement term like multiple times to them, even though the
Yes,
customer initials and signs, some of them
yes,
get surprised, 6 months in, a year in, that they signed a longer term agreement and they're all upset and they blame the
yeah,
salesperson, right? So I'm like, that's a good point. We should always reiterate multiple times just to minimize the back end as a
right,
process. So I mean, it's
correct.
amazing how it develops better business professionals across the board who are actually trusted advisors versus just salespeople.
Yeah. Leading with
Mm,
gratitude, I guess, is
mm,
another one of those things that I think people talk about it or they think about it, but then there's like truly leading with gratitude. I had a woman on my team last year, and I had the customer reaching out to me on several occasions to tell me how she wrote an email to this person to thank, the admin, or to thank the person who was doing the tech install, and just glorifying them,
mm,
which just in turn made everything better. She would send messages like that and CC our CEO.
mm.
This was at Zoom Info, and Henry always
Yeah.
made a great point to like come back to that customer and say, "I'm so glad that Tina was able to assist in this, and we really value your." But like again, connecting the dots from that perspective does nothing but make relationships stronger.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the human first. We all do better and want to do
Yeah.
better when we know we're appreciated and that we're bringing value to a team. I think there's so many roles and they just don't feel like they're really impacting anybody because
Mhm.
nobody tells them or takes the time to tell them. And when we do, magic happens. It's
Oh, yeah.
magical.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%. I think it's so vital, right? I remember, and I think it's like, it starts with the leader. 'Cause I think a lot of times the individual rep kind of gets stuck in their own road and their path, but the leader, it's so vital, right? So I remember, years ago as a direct frontline sales leader, I would run other department appreciation events
my God, so smart. I
just to,
love that idea.
like, hey, thank you, CS, for everything you do. Cause I know we mess
Yes,
things up all the time, and they're so
yes.
thankful,
So thankful.
so appreciative,
So
right?
thankful.
But you help
Yeah.
start breaking that.
I'm gonna write that one
That's a good
down.
one.
I'm writing it down, Marcus.
That's a good one, and it's
It
easy to
is.
do, right? Like, another thing that I found was really valuable as a leader, that and I had to train the reps to do this because, like, I first showed them how I did it, and then they would start doing it too. It was like, rep closes a big deal. Usually, like, the leader emails everyone or slacks everyone, "Hey, great job to, like, Sunny. She's closed this massive, like, $3 million deal, blah, blah, blah." Everyone's like, "Cool, great job, Sunny. That's awesome. You're a rock star." But think about all the people that helped as well from the
The
other
other 15
departments.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The
like,
other 15
what I
people.
did was when that deal was closed, I would email those people and I'll CC the rep and CC like the
Yeah.
execs. I'm like, hey, big shout out to like all these department heads. You were instrumental in helping us close this deal for so because when you hop on a call with us here and help them with this, and then when CS did this, they help us with this, and that's how we close this deal. So thank you so much. So they all feel really good now because they don't get paid commission. They don't get paid a bonus. If
No,
we can recognize
but the
them,
recognize is
that's
so
it.
great.
So
One
powerful.
thing that my current leader does, and I love this, is that his town hall meetings, he has a whole gratitude slide where we can, write in, and those people, they're not the salespeople, they're the extended team
Right.
attend the town hall and they get to see their name in lights and why it's in lights and be recognized across everybody in like a real moment.
I love
I
that.
also love the like we have Spark Points or like the companies that are doing like
Oh, yeah.
the awards and recognition.
Yeah.
Like you can buy a gift or do something like that. But shouting people out in that way, I think those companies are magic. So
Oh,
good.
100%. I mean, it's just, I feel a lot of, like, I mean, I've talked to salespeople or anybody really with jobs that they'll stay with their current company if they feel appreciated, even if they have way better offers.
Exactly. No,
Like,
the people at Docusign have been with the company. I've never worked at especially a tech company with the longevity of people, 5 years, 6 years,
Mm,
8 years, 9 years,
that's
10 years.
amazing.
I'm like, they're doing something right. Tech people scoot around all the time. And DocuSign is a human first place. And I'm
Mm.
super, super happy. I feel really, really fortunate to be working there, but really blown my mind at the longevity of the people there because they feel appreciated.
That's amazing. And so I love that. So what are maybe some things you've experienced or seen? You're like, okay, this is some of these little things that like that's been part of the magic, if you will, that's making it happen. If you don't
At
mind sharing the
DocuSign?
secrets. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
DocuSign, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Here's one of them. This blows my mind. Their maternity and paternity leave policy is 6 months. It's 6 months. That's
Great.
certainly unheard of. And
Oh
then
yeah. Especially
I
in
just
America.
had
Especially in America.
it's yeah, right. I mean, we're learning from our neighbors
Our
across the
neighbors,
pond.
our European neighbors.
Correct. We may not get August off for vacation, but we do get 6 months leave. I had someone just come back from maternity leave. And they shipped her, and she had to go on an offsite.
Mm.
They shipped her a whole thing to send her breast milk back home,
Oh,
like
awesome.
overnight FedEx, like this. I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what? Tell me more. So they've created this
Mm.
environment where they've listened and they understand who the people are that are working at their company. We want to have women in the workforce. It's really hard
Mm.
after you have kids to try to juggle it all. It's hard for men as well.
Yeah.
Women have some physical, biological things we have to take
Sure.
care of, but the being able to provide an environment like that on that side, but then to help leaders know that we should be hiring all types of people at all
Mm.
ages and all parts of their life. They are creating an environment where a salesperson goes on leave and somebody can pick up their book of business without taking on the quota, but they get the benefits. So they have an
Mm.
incentive to like dig in and the territory doesn't die and the leader doesn't fail. And it's no, like we are all working together for the greater good of our
Mm.
customers. And that means taking care of our employees in these minute little HR sort of ways. But that's one
Interesting.
example that comes to mind that has absolutely blown my mind. And I think it's amazing.
I love that maternity and paternity policy, which is amazing. And you kind of you hint a little. Let's make sure I understand. So, someone goes on mat leave or pat leave. So, what happens to their quota with another rep? Can you explain that a little more so I understand it?
Sure. So I just had someone go on pat leave yesterday and he had a baby girl. It's like the most
Amazing.
exciting thing ever. First child. Anyway, his territory got distributed across the rest of the team. That anything they close in the territory piece that they get
Yeah.
counts towards their own quota and accelerators. So they have
Mm.
a heightened opportunity
Oh yeah.
to make more money, but
Beautiful.
they don't get the quota retirement. So their quota
Mm.
doesn't go up because
Yeah.
they got this territory. Their quota
Mm.
stays the same.
Wow.
And so they are wildly incentive to be as creative as
Mm.
possible and just crush it. Where at other companies I've worked at, the leader takes the quota. Nobody wants to work the business
Mm.
because the accounts are larger, the deals take longer.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to have it when they come back anyway. So what's the point? And then you just have this dead territory.
Yeah.
Or I'm working the territory, which it's like, how many territories can I have? I've got, my day job and my night job now.
Yeah.
I like that's just it's magic. That
Mm.
policy blows my mind, but those are all the pieces that create an environment for
Yeah.
people who might be going on maternity leave or might have life-changing events
Yeah.
where, everyone like I want to hire those people. I'm going to hire the best person for the job, regardless of where they are in their life,
Mhm.
stage, because of these other policies that have been put in place. I think it's
Mm.
really
Yeah, I
great.
love
Does
that
that,
so much.
yeah,
So, like, let's just
yeah.
say I'm a nitty gritty guy. I want to get in the weeds a little bit. Let's just say
Get in the weeds.
because I think that's something that I think a lot of companies don't have figured out, right? Especially in tech. So let's just say, for example, that person goes on the guy who's on pat leave. Guy pat leave comes back, and obviously there's deals in the pipeline that are not closed yet. Is there like a certain like handoff
Yeah.
period? Does that person on pat leave now get those deals? What's that kind of look like? I'm thinking like as like a CR listening, I'm like, oh, I need to do a better job, but there might be some weird other things I'm missing as part of this design.
Well, this is also crazy. So the woman who just came back from maternity last week, so her territory had been, dispersed.
Yep.
She got it back. Everyone gets a hold for 30 days.
Makes
And
sense.
there's one outstanding opportunity that I was like, you know what? Keep that for the quarter. You've worked really hard on this. We're at a critical moment with this. So continue to hold on to that. She was like, great, perfect. Because what comes around goes around. Someone
Yeah.
else will go out on leave and then she'll get the benefits of that, right? So,
Mm.
so there's that piece of it. Holds are really, really tricky if you can set a standard
Yeah.
and stick to that, which is really hard. But when everybody knows the rules up front, and then when it happens on the back end and the hold has been 30 days and we have to move on, they're not surprised by it. You just say, this
Mm.
is what we're doing.
So I think it's really,
Conversely, she comes back and she's like, well, like now my pipeline's pretty like sparse. We just had this conversation yesterday. I was like, of course it is. You just got back from mat leave. Of course, people have been like taking the low hanging fruit. Be easy on yourself. Like
Mhm.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Right.
Just take a deep breath. Like let's get into this together. So, again, it comes full circle, right?
Oh,
Humans first.
100%.
The work. Yeah.
We had a very similar policy. I mean, granted, where I came from, the company around for like 100 years. So they had gone through so many iterations of like policy and process. But it was very similar in the sense of, and someone goes on now, it wasn't apparently it was like 2 weeks for guys,
Right.
Only
Yeah.
three
I
for
mean, this
females.
is 6 months.
6 months.
That's like
Amazing.
unheard of.
So you have that, right? And then what I like is that the clear policy, which is like, the territory gets dispersed amongst the existing team. And they all know once X person comes back, you have a 30-day window to basically max it out. So already within the rules.
Yeah.
So then, they're also going to take the low-hanging fruit into inbound leads. Maybe they may not prospect as heavy because they have their own territory if they know it may not be worth it, right? But then, boom, they transition over. You and I both know those reps aren't going to close every single lead. So you're going to have a bunch of overflow, which will go into the person who was on mat or pat leave, right? So that help them out, kind of ease into the situation. So I think the lesson here for other execs is have a really clear policy that you're all consistent to, so everyone feels it's clear and like
It's clear and it's transparent, right? Don't
transparent.
make hidden deals behind curtains because then all of a sudden you're an untrusted advisor to your team. And
100%.
it's having the super adverse effect that you're hoping for it to have. But when you put these types of policies in place, yes, the argument would be, well, this person could get into accelerators faster, and then I'm going to be paying them out more. And then what does that do? And that's a very myopic look into the whole picture of employee happiness, which creates employee retention, which can filter right back into the customer experience and customers spending more money. Like it's all wildly connected. Wildly connected.
That's it. I mean, when you think about it, at the end of the day, what's the best thing for the customer, right?
Yeah.
And kind of similar to what you mentioned, like when you have that handoff, it's pretty smooth, especially with like early sales cycle, 30 days in, all right, whatever, you hand it over. Obviously, in certain situations where they're close to the end of the deal and there's like many stakeholders, yeah, maybe that requires an exception to be put in place because of the situation, right?
Yes.
But when it's really clear that way, it's more fair across the board. And I know some reps like, they should be able to hold it forever. I'm like, but what is the best thing for the customer? And long-term wise, how can it be as fair as possible for the overall organization too?
Right. Right. Well, and is this a real opportunity that you're wanting to hold on forever? Like, is this really a real opportunity?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go like, okay, first, let's are you talking to the economic buyer? Well, no. Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Well, this is one person. Okay. Do we have real pay? Well,
I had a call with them. I'm like, well, you've had it for 6 months, so you probably should have had that one call a while ago.
Oh yeah.
Just say.
Well, so you get in the weeds, you get you get the transparency, you get the magnifying glass side. You're like, all right, trust but verify.
Yeah. Trust but verify. And when you lead, you lead through example and you lead through transparency. And these are all words that are way overused. Whatever, for good reason. I'm not sure if it's for good reason. They're overused words, but when you truly lead that way, and you're creating an environment for success just naturally because people can believe you, they trust you, they trust that you have their best interests, they trust when you tell them like it's all the world's coming to an end right now, like we've got to double down on X, Y, and Z. They're like, I'm all in. I'm all in because you don't tell me this every single day. You don't tell me this once a year. You're telling me every now and then. And I know that I'm focusing on this now, right? And that I'll have your back. So it's human first.
Well, I also
it all comes back to human first and lead with the customer as your guiding light.
That's right. And you know what? Even if you're just beating that drum, but they'll see your actions, right?
Absolutely.
I'm a believer, we all see better than we hear. They see your actions all the time. So amazing conversations today. Where can people find you, Sunny, if you want to hear more from you, learn more about Docusign? Where can they find you?
Oh my gosh. Well, certainly on LinkedIn all the time, but sunny.bliss at Docusign.com. I love to connect with everybody all of the time. I will respond. I will respond. I want to help. I want to help everybody just be the best version of themselves.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Revenue Vault. Now, if you got value, here's your next step. You go to bentleyconsulting.com/teams, get a free performance scan of your sales org. We'll show you exactly where deals are installing and how to actually fix it. And this episode gave even one insight worth sharing. Make sure to send it to a sales leader you respect. I'm Marcus Chen. Thanks for joining us in the Vault.